Hang on to your hats. We're talking about the end times here on the 167. Welcome.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
Hey, welcome back to the 167. I'm here with Trudy and Rick George,
Good morning.
Good morning,
the dynamic duo.
There we are.
or something like that.
We get you on Sunday morning and on the podcast together. It's wonderful. So, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Tim Felks. I know Tim has been catching up on the podcast. It's funny, I walk into on Sunday mornings, and if you come up to me and you're like, "Hey, I love the podcast," listen, I give you a shout out. So, Tim, glad you're catching up.
Good job, Tim.
Enjoy your working on those aeroplanes while listening to the 167. So I love this series, by the way. First of all, let me just lavish some praise on you a little bit. Like, I love it. I think you guys are covering it really well. I'm always a little bit skeptical whenever church is like, we're going to talk about the end times. And I'm like, sure you are. Sure you are. And then it's just like, but you guys are really going through it, laying down the timelines, talking about Daniel, and I think that's a misconception for a lot of people, that it's not going through Revelation, it's going through Thessalonians and Daniel and Gospels and all of those things. Yeah. So kudos to that.
One of the things that we've talked about, I think Trudy mentioned it maybe in week one, that people want to understand end times, but to do that, you have to understand the whole Bible. Yeah. Like, you can't just say, I just want to know about this. Well, you can't. It's all tied together.
Well, and that's the crazy thing, because you'll get there in Revelation, they'll be like, well, there's this beast that has these 7 heads, and I'm like, I don't understand what that is. But if you go back to Daniel, like, oh, like a good, a lot of times I think people do that as Christians. We kind of write off the Old Testament and say, we don't need this anymore. And I'm like, you cannot understand the New Testament without the symbolism of the Old Testament.
It's almost like God intended it to all go together, like as crazy as I know.
Could be.
So today I just want to kind of start off and kick it off by just asking this. I think that every time that we do talk about this, I think that is it's almost like Christian clickbait. If you say end times, people are like, I want to know about. So there is a hunger to know about the end times, but just, I think also just, I almost want to say systematic, but it's, nobody's very informed about it, and they're very intimidated by it, and yet they have a hunger for it. Why do you think that is in Christian community, that like this is something that people are very interested in and yet kind of give up on very easily and are very uninformed about? You would think that if Christians are very interested, that they would be very informed.
Yeah, I think it's a lack of discipline, because it takes a lot of work. But Trudy can speak on that, just to her experience of digging into it.
Yeah, I would say that that's really why, like, it's just culture in general. We just want an answer. We don't want to work to find anything. We just want an answer. And end times it's not just, you can find that. You can clickbait. You can find people that will say that. But to understand it, like we said before, it's all through the Bible. So you have to know the Bible. And how many people have read through the Bible? Probably not that many.
Yeah. It's like, in my mind, and sometimes we like to watch documentaries, probably a lot of documentaries, just real life things, but sometimes like a mystery where you have a detective or someone that's trying to find the killer, or and you go into their private room, this bedroom, and the walls are covered with pictures and thread running from here to there, and there's all these, and you're like, what is happening in this room? And if you just walked in there, it would make no sense. It just looks like this mess of yarn and pictures and colors, but to him, like, every one of those has a very specific meaning of what it's leading to, and that's in essence what the discovery, or your pursuit of discovering end times events, is going into a room and putting pictures and string and threads, and like, at some point you're like, okay, now it's all pointing to this thing.
Yeah, I think that some people are very intimidated by the fact that there's not a chapter in the Bible that says, okay, now listen, this is what I meant, but this is what, and like, I think that's where people get a lot of flack too, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. People will say, I have a friend who's in Utah right now, and so he's surrounded by people who are Mormon and they don't believe in the Trinity, and they're like, the Trinity's not in the Bible, and I'm going, well, it doesn't say the word Trinity
Right.
in the Bible. That is something that we have used to describe the connection points where we see that Christ is the Word and the Holy Spirit and the Father. And so we call this. And so I think in end times, there's a lot of that going on where we say, people are like, the word rapture is not in the Bible. And it's like, listen,
Yeah.
it's not a Greek word. You're correct. But it's, it's a Latin word that describes, actually it's a
Exactly.
translation. But so I want to start off by talking about a few of the things that you kind of talked about and said. I was, listening for the message all the times that you were like, we don't have time to talk. We don't have time to talk about this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you some time to talk about a lot of this stuff. But I know we were talking about being in the age of the Gentiles. And so we were talking about that there was kind of this age where God was with his people, either through the tabernacle or the temple. The temple is destroyed in 70 AD. And so we've kind of entered the time of the Gentiles. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Is how does that important to our Christian walk? Because I think that right now there is a tension you addressed on Sunday morning of Israel and how that's, people are using, I think that in culture right now, people are using words as slanders or slurs when it's not, it's like, what are you, a Zionist? And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Like,
Exactly.
you're going to have to explain that. We were this morning when I was getting dressed and Trudy was listening to something and they were talking about the term free Palestine. Okay. Define that for me. What do you mean by free Palestine? Like what
What is Palestine?
Yeah, what is Palestine? Why are you chanting that? Why is that such a war cry? I don't think you know what that means exactly. And so I agree.
From the river to the sea.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I would say most people have no idea what that means.
One of my favorite things right now is there's a guy that, he does street interviews and he goes to they're like, from the river to the sea. And they're like, which river?
Yeah.
And they're like,
the
Yeah.
the Mississippi.
They did. They said which sea, and he goes, the Black Sea.
Yeah,
Like it was
I
a
know.
bunch of people that have no idea.
Yeah, and so and that goes back to what we were saying earlier. That it's lack of discipline. You don't know. I don't know. I don't spend enough time. It takes a lot. Going back to the guy in the room with all those, you have to be consumed in some to get all the lines going to the same. It has to be a passion.
I say, I just read this recently, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but Bible literacy is continuing just to plummet, which I think it is something we have to really be concerned about. I mean, obviously concerned about it, but I know in the studies that I do, it's really easy to never read the Bible.
Yeah.
You're just reading, like you're working, you're learning things, but you don't actually just sit down and read Revelation or read Daniel and so I plug reading through the Bible. I think you should have read through the Bible, and there's so many ways that you can do that now where you're actually reading the word. You can do that Bible recap, I think it's what it's called. And like literally every day they give you a 15-minute teaching on what you just read. Like there's so many ways to do it that I feel like that's where we need to start, is just actually reading the Bible. Because, and I'm all about Right Now Media and all of those things, but it is just so easy to not actually read the Bible these days.
Well, it's like reading. I think that we're in a society where we're almost like, we used to have commentaries, right? Like when we,
Right.
pre-internet, like you would have this, like a Matthew Henry commentary, and then you would sit there and you'd read the verse and then go over to the commentary and he'd cross-reference things and do whatever. And now it's almost like we're reading the commentary without reading the scripture.
Right.
Like you're watching the TikTok video, you're watching the Instagram reel,
Yeah.
you're watching the YouTube video, but you're not actually pairing it with the scripture. And even to that point, like Right Now Media, we offer our people a Right Now Media subscription, and they'll watch a series on Romans and yet not read. Like it'll literally say, hey, this is a video about Romans chapter 1 through whatever, and they'll watch the video but not read the
We just want
chapter.
we just want someone to tell us what it means. We don't want to read it and try to understand it ourselves. It's just part of technology.
And
It's right there.
obviously, it's not helping our literacy. We don't understand the Bible better because of that. So I think that probably needs to change how we view Scripture, maybe, and actually read the Word.
Well, and I think it affects us in this way, like what you're seeing in society right now, where you have, kind of, like I said, the kind of the Free Palestine crowd, where it's more, you'd say, like more on the left, and they're like, man, we just hate Israel. We think it's an oppressive thing. And then on the right, you have what are called like the Groypers, which are people who are right wing, anti-Israel. They think the Jews secretly control the money, and you have all these things. And I think that people have lost the understanding of what you read in Romans and what you read in different parts of the Bible. We've tried to cover that like briefly this year in Galatians and a couple of other things of how does that relate to what is God's role? Like you guys were talking about this week, what is God's role for Israel? Has he just been like, don't care about you, you killed my son, like I'm done with you, we replaced Israel, we're a continuation of it. And I think that people, because they have a lack of understanding about the scriptures, then don't know what to think in pop culture and geopolitical issues.
Right, because if it cracks me up when somebody comes and says, do you know what Israel has done? Do you know that they're not really a spiritual nation? They're not. And I'm like, have you ever read the Bible?
Yeah. It's
Like, when has Israel been just sold out for God?
Yeah.
Like,
It's like, I choose you. We're going to make this golden calf.
Yeah.
it's like this. If you've read the Bible, this is not an unusual thing for God to love a people that doesn't love him back. Like, that's what it's been from the beginning of time. So, yeah.
Well, I'm fascinated by all of that because I'm always like, I don't know how now you can be Jewish and not sacrifice things. But all of that fascinates me that they can't see Jesus in Isaiah and all these other things.
Yep, it is pretty bizarre.
But I always go back to...
Hey, but I have to say one thing.
Yeah.
The age of the Gentiles started not with the fall of the temple in AD 70, but the age of the Gentiles started with Nebuchadnezzar.
Yes.
So all the way back. And so that just means, because some people say, okay, well, now Israel is a nation again. Are we still in the age of the Gentiles? We still are, because they are still, they do not encompass what God has given them. So the Gentiles still... what is the word I'm trying to find? They still control. They still have authority over Israel. So we're still in the age of the Gentiles, even though Israel now is a nation.
Right, and that's what I talked a little bit about with those pictures that, on the Temple Mount, you've got the Dome of the Rock. You don't have a temple for the Jewish people to go and worship. You have Gentiles that have controlling what was once God, or that does belong to God. They've just taken it over.
That is always the thing that fascinates me. I was talking to some of our young men because they're, caught up in this internet stuff. And, they're like, they control the world. And I'm like, they don't even control their own country, man. Like they can't control their own Temple Mount. Like the Islamic Walk, like, is the people that police the Temple Mount. And like Israel allows that.
Well, when we went to Israel, and I'm terrible with the names of these places, but it's the Catholic Church that's built over the place that they believe that the cross stood, and people go and and kiss the rock
ground
and all of that.
Yeah, it's weird.
But that is controlled by Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's not even things that are there. Like, of course, the Temple Mount, the temple's not there. But here is the place, and there's this beautiful, it's ridiculous.
It is gold plated.
Oh,
it is
just,
the most. It is fabulous. Like it
fabulous,
makes your
but
eyes
gaudy.
hurt. It's so it's so shiny and
How come
bright.
we didn't build our church like that?
Yeah. Well, I think you know why.
And people stand in line.
Gold plated.
Yeah, people stand in line for hours, get on their hands and knees, crawl under this altar thing, and kiss the ground where they say this is where the cross was, and you're like, oh, it's such a moving spiritual experience. Controlled by the Muslims.
Well, I think that's, like when we talk about that there's going to be a great confusion in the end times. And it's like, very often, like I know we talked about the identity of the Antichrist, and it's like he's usually called the man from Persia. And I think there's definitely, people I think miss the fact that Christianity is not a Western religion. It's a Eastern religion. It's Middle East.
Right.
But there's so much to that where, like you said, you go there and it's just so, I don't know. Like people have contended over this, and almost all of the what are they call those resolutions that are passed by the United Nations are about one tiny little country that's like
crazy.
the size of
Yeah.
New Jersey. It's crazy, but I don't know how people can deny that something incredible happened here, and that it's so important.
Well, and really until just recently, what did they have to offer? So until they became a nation, the land was pretty much desert, and until they found the gas or whatever it is they found right off the Mediterranean, that's
Oh, yeah,
worth billions of dollars, or more than that probably. Like there really wasn't even anything for them to offer, that it was still a problem. So
It's
yeah,
a bunch
it has
of
to
rocks.
be a God thing.
Yeah, it's a bunch of rocks and hills and dirt, and it's just not that beautiful.
I watched this documentary, and it was fascinating about how, in the Old Testament, it talks about how like Abraham dug these wells, and then like the enemies would come and fill them up because if you had a well, you owned the land.
Right.
And they were talking about how what a wasteland Israel was until they not only they drilled for the gas, but they drilled for water and found all these springs, and it's just like, and then it revitalizes the land. Now they grow a bunch of
Oh yeah,
produce and
now
stuff.
it's starting to become a beautiful place.
Blooming, a part of, that people believe that's part of prophecy being fulfilled, is the land is, even since we were there, the difference in the land is amazing. Yeah, it's starting to bloom.
There you go.
The desert is blooming.
So when we're talking about being in the church age, being in this age of, the Gentiles, the word has come to the Gentiles, and the Gentiles are coming through, and we're supposed to be spreading the word through the church. You talked about us being in what you think is the apostasy, like that kind of seventh age of the church, that the church is walking away from the truth. And so where have we seen that happen in our own culture? Where are we seeing it continually, and what should we be on guard for, particularly as Christians?
So I'll start off and so it doesn't take a deep dive to look and see churches that once were thriving churches who stood, for God, on the Word of God, that have wavered and now would align themselves with what is culturally known as progressive Christianity, where it's a new form of, and I'm using air quotes,
For those of the not watching us on YouTube.
Christianity, because it doesn't really reflect Christianity. It's a new religion that wants to take some good parts of Christianity, but then add in all the things, all the feel goods, all the things that I want and I wish were in, and it creates this new version. It's called progressive Christianity. And so when you look at churches that are like teaching things that are not scriptural, you can see that easily. Just look around, and it's a pretty easy find. But
Yeah, I think cults, one of the things that, and I'll say cult in the sense that one thing that cults have in common is that Jesus is not the only way. So I think as we're looking at things, if Jesus isn't it, if Jesus isn't all there is, then you probably need to look into what you're being taught or what's going on, because it may not be that they're not saying Jesus is a way, or they may be saying you need to do this to get to Jesus,
Right.
but there's something, it takes something more than just Jesus to get you into a relationship with God. And yeah, I think that's something to be looking for if you're wondering, what I'm is what I'm believing, what I'm thinking. Even here, if you're coming to New Life and you're saying, what kind of church is this? Like, if we're not saying, if there's ever a time we don't say Jesus is the only way to get to God,
Right.
then you need to be concerned about that.
And it is, I understand some churches that, like, you want to compromise because you want to reach people. And so it's not that I don't understand that. You and I, Lucas, have both had conversations with people who have come and said, hey, we've heard a lot about New Life. Sounds like a lot of exciting things happening there. What are your beliefs on, and then they'll throw out one of those cultural things, LGBT or Israel, or any. And as soon as you take a stand and you say, okay, here's what we believe the Bible says, well, now we become the bad guys. And we've had that numerous times where then people have gotten angry or tried to tell us that we're wrong or bad. And it would be much easier to say, yes, I understand. We can make concessions for you and your belief here. And, we just won't make a big deal of that. And then that's one little step away from the truth, the historical truth of the gospel. And you do that enough times and you take little steps away, and then you've just drifted so far. And that's what we're seeing culturally. People, I don't think it was an intentional, I hate God and God's word. It's, I don't like this part. It seems exclusive.
Or
It is.
Or the God.
You're saying it sounds narrow.
Yeah.
Right. The God that I serve wouldn't. The God that I serve wouldn't. And it's like, that is, and I know I've said that in the past. I have said, the God that I know wouldn't. And it's like, no, I need to know who God is from his word. And then I need to take my view of God from his word. So I'm trying to think of a good example.
But I think that that's incredibly true, though, when people, it's almost an admission when people are, well, the God I serve wouldn't do that. I'm like, that's because you serve yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
You have this perception of God that's not based in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's percept on what I would do.
Right.
So what we've heard in the past is a phrase, and I'm probably going to botch it, is God created man in his image, but man tries to create God in their image.
Right.
So it doesn't work that way. No, we're created in God's image. God is not created in our image.
And we have a lot of, I would say, permission giving here at this church where, like I said, we teach step 1 and people are like, well, what do you guys believe about that? I'm like, this is what we believe as a church. Now, we won't put you out of the church and say, you're not premillennial, but
We hate you.
right. But what you're going to hear from the pulpit is this.
Yes.
And you can, and I think that we've lost this as a culture, obviously, is to go somewhere and go, no, I don't agree with that. Anyways, and just, but I enjoy this community and I disagree with you and let's go to the scripture on that. I think we've lost that as a society.
Right.
The
But you
ability to
do also
disagree.
say, if you're not going to follow the leaders, go find someplace.
Yeah. If you're going to,
Yeah.
if your goal is like, I don't believe that, I should start a Sunday school where I contradict the pastor. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Right.
Yeah. That's just just go. Life is too short to cause division. And just find that place and make it the best place that it can be.
Yeah.
So.
And a lot of these issues, like I said, we obviously take a stance on it one way or the other, but very smart people have debated these things for
Exactly.
2,000 years. And
yeah.
it's like, hey, man, we're going to do our best and try and find what's
Especially
happening in
end
scriptures.
times stuff. Yes.
Yeah. And I would say that, being in the apostasy, it's very hard to even follow teachers. Cause like I said, if the minute you follow a teacher, it's just like, yes, no, yes, yet. Like there's nobody I agree with 100%.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to read their Bibles, but
Now, we've said in the past, you and I, we have said things like what you just said. I don't, yes, this guy's really good. I don't agree 100%. And we've both said, I don't know that I agree with 100% of what I've said in the past.
I'm like, I watch old sermons and I'm
Yeah,
like,
I was like,
oh,
I went back and man, what was I thinking there?
I have had fresh revelation.
Yeah, so I think I got that one just a little wrong. So
And now because of the internet, we can relive the experience.
yeah,
But the thing that I think we have to be careful about as you put that out, yes, Christianity is evolving. And there is truth in that. Or we as Christians are evolving, but there is foundational
Yes.
truth that doesn't change. And that's what the apostasy is turning your back on the foundational truth and saying, I have a new truth.
Yeah.
I have a better truth, because there are people in apostasy from the church that are still spiritual.
Yes.
So we have to, there is, even though, yes, there is evolution in our understanding and our thought, the foundational truth is the truth. And that's how we can have apostasy.
Yeah, so
because
in
you
y-
go against that.
yeah. So to answer your question and tie it in with what Trudy's saying is, what you might be more familiar with is this deconstructionism, and it's deconstructing the very foundation of the faith and just blowing the whole thing up and saying, okay, now We've deconstructed it. Now let's redefine what all of these things mean. And they're redefining the historical foundational truths. That's where you get apostasy. Apostasy doesn't not come because you believe that, well, the rapture is going to take place after 3.5 years. And I say, oh no, I think it's going to happen at the very beginning. You're an apostate. It's like, no,
Yeah.
that is not apostasy.
Well, people do that with the gospel too, where they're like, "Hey, I believe that Jesus saves us. It's the one you call upon the name of Jesus and you're saved." And I think that you should pursue righteousness. That's a different gospel. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like a different gospel is Joseph Smith has a dream where an angel brings him tablets.
Exactly.
That's a different gospel.
Yeah,
But-
so it would serve probably most people well to understand a little bit deeper what apostasy is and what it means to be apostate. It doesn't mean that I disagree with you. It means that I have taken a foundational truth and eliminated it from my vocabulary or my belief system and started something else.
I've redefined something because in the same thing, like when we talked about like an LGBTQ issue, it's love is love, and I'm like, no, love has a very clear definition
Yes.
in the Bible, and if this doesn't match up with that definition, then it's not love.
Exactly.
So, let's talk a little bit about the rapture. I'm on like question 2. We're like 25 minutes in. So let's talk a little bit about the rapture. Obviously, this is a Christian TikTok hot button thing where people are like, I don't believe in the rapture, which I always think that whenever somebody says, I don't believe in this, I'm like, everybody believes in, like, people are like, I don't believe in the prosperity gospel. I'm like, everyone believes in prosperity. You're just on a sliding scale of, if I follow the Lord, my life will be better, to he wants to give me a Lamborghini. Like,
Exactly.
you're somewhere in that scale. So usually people believe that at some point Christ will come back for us. So in the rapture, why is it that, when the church, you talked about the church being gone, like, what is that world even going to be like? Like, you talked a little bit even about the generation being gone and what the danger that the church is in.
I think that we already see it. And again, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's still the majority of, we'll say, historically biblical Christians are, and this is self-defined. So anyway,
The best Christians are boomers.
How statistics are, but the boomers are the hugest number. Like it's dramatically more than the rest of the other generations, and so, like, again, as me being the end of the boomers, like, we're not that many years away unless God raises up a new generation or 2 generations. Like, we're not that far away from the darkness overwhelming the light. Now, obviously, this is just America, so I don't know what God's going to do every place else, but I think we've already seen it. Like the things that I said, that you see evil is just portrayed as normal.
Yeah.
Like,
It's out in the open.
yeah, and it's like everything you see, everything you do, it just seems normal.
You have,
Here's a great example of that. Several months ago, the CEO of an insurance company was gunned down, shot in the back,
oh yeah.
walking down the sidewalk, going to a conference, and it was celebrated by lots of people saying, well, yeah, well,
deserved
that's
it.
that's what he deserved. And it was celebrated. It's like, what has to be going wrong for a culture to celebrate, any part of a culture to celebrate a man with a family running a business, whether you like the business or not, that he's just going to do his job and somebody randomly shoots him in the back, and you're like, yes, that's a great thing. Charlie Kirk being assassinated and people cheering and saying, yes, that he deserved, that is bizarre to me. So when you say we're seeing it, yes. And you're like, well, it's not widespread, but it's getting there.
It's fairly
Yeah,
widespread.
it's
gonna say.
getting there.
And I wouldn't even know if it's I would say it's widespread, but it is acceptable to shout it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, I remember, what was that, a couple of years ago, where it was shout your abortion. And it's like, are you kidding me? You know,
Yeah.
like, and so it's, even if it's a radical, like, minority of people, it has become socially acceptable for them to be loud about that, and for for people to actually cower from that rather than to stand up to it. And I think that your generation, I thought you touched on a really interesting thing, was your generation, I think, might be the last generation in America that grew up in a Christian culture. Like, if you didn't go to church, like, even if you didn't follow Jesus, you still went to church to keep up appearances. Like, I'm a good person if I go to church, and now you're a bad person if you go to church. You're, you know, like I said, we talked about slurs. You're Christian nationalist. You're what, you know, it's just like you can just say that with a tone, and it doesn't mean what you think it means, kind of a thing. But
think how fast that's happened.
well, yeah, like I grew, you know, I try and explain that to people. I'm like, I grew up in the, you know, 80s and 90s, and I'm like, the fact that we're having a debate over who's a man and who's a woman is ridiculous.
It's like,
I'm like,
mind-boggling.
yeah, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I remember hearing about, I say this all the time, like, I remember hearing about postmodernism where they're like, yeah, they'll just change the meaning of words. And I'm like, no one will do that.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. How could you change the meaning of a word? And then, like, 20 years later, I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
like, do words mean anything? You know,
Here we are.
yeah. And so when we're talking about the church being removed from that, you're removing truth, you're removing that. And so all these little microcosms, I think, that we see of these mini battles that were taking place will just be what it is. So when the church is removed, I know you talked about giving people hope. What is the hope for people that, you know, God forbid they miss the rapture? What is the hope that they can still kind of come back to Christ in that? Where is their hope?
Well, there's always hope, and God never gives up, and there will continue to be a pursuit of those who are left. It'll just be more difficult.
And their hope will be death.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
really,
just let
that
me
will
die.
be that will be that will be their hope, that they die during that time, which I think they will. Like, I don't think people will come to Christ. That's the whole reason for the tribulation. So people are going to come to Christ, but I think as believers, they will not live long.
Yeah, it says, like, part of it's like, yeah, you're going to get beheaded. And I'm like, oh,
Good.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's not going to last long. Some people believe that at the midpoint of tribulation, when the abomination of desolation takes place and all of those things that happen at the midpoint, that at that point there's no more chance.
Yeah.
That evangelism, I'm not going to say there's no more chance, but evangelism is done at that point. But I don't know if that's true or not, because we still have the 144,000. So I don't know.
I know all of those characters are so interesting, and I think that those are, you know, definitely worth talking about, which is the 144,000, and of course the two witnesses, where I'm just like, you know, and I'll just ask you this quickly, you know, when you're reading Revelation, do you think that that's literally going to happen? Like, I think that would be awesome, but it talks about how, like, they'll be on the Temple Mount and people will try and take them off the Temple Mount and they'll just rain down fire on them. And
I
I'm
think
like,
it will happen. I mean, I don't think it will look like it does in our mind's eye.
like
right
a
now.
crazy guy with like big hair
Yeah.
and like he's wearing like a potato sack and he's like, fire, fireball. You know, he's just casting fireball over and over.
I think it may be different than what we think, but I think it will literally happen. Yeah.
Yeah. At Hollywood, and I mentioned that earlier, Hollywood has tried their best to give us an idea of what things are, and it's like, God's like, ooh, nice try. Look at this.
I know everybody's like, you know, like really what that is, it's an Apache helicopter. I'm like, really? That's going to be disappointing.
Yeah.
Like, I want to
Yeah,
see that
I want
dude.
something a little more.
I want someone with some pizzazz.
Yeah.
Those are people that decided that a long time ago. Now there's all kinds of new things that it could be. But I do think that along that line, so you think about how many prophecies there were about Christ's first coming and how many people knew those prophecies and still didn't get it because they had decided what it would look like. Because God didn't tell them. Like, the prophecies, yes, they all were completely fulfilled, but there were so many other things that weren't,
Yeah.
that they couldn't, like, they had decided in their head. So I think as we look at Revelation, yes, it will all be literally fulfilled. Will it look like what it looks like in my head? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I think it will.
It's like there's going to be a king that comes from Bethlehem to just springs whole cloth as an adult. And he's going to have this army that takes on Rome. I'm like, where did the army come from?
Yeah.
Exactly. But that's That's what, and I think we do the same thing with the second coming, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
I know. I'm always like, I watch a lot of teaching where it's like, they completely allegorize Revelation. And then there's the other side where it's like, there's going to be a dragon that comes out of the sea. I'm like, that would be cool. I don't know if it will happen,
exactly.
but like,
So we're through question 2 after
Yeah.
35 minutes.
I know.
Question 2 of 6
Here we go.
or 7. So.
So I'm going to hit a couple of things that you said. I wish we could talk about it, but we couldn't do it. Tell me about the missing tribes.
Okay, probably nobody cares about this, but this year it has been our one of the things that I have pushed. Honestly, I push people to. I do Bible studies with people because that's the only way I'm motivated to learn. So I wanted to learn and make sure I knew the 12 tribes, and we could name the 12 disciples. So those are things we've added to what we do, but. It's been very helpful because then we get to Revelation and here we see how these 12 tribes work. But there's 2 ways to answer. I can answer really fast or I could answer long, but I probably should answer fast. Okay, so the 2 tribes are Dan and Ephraim. Those are the 2 tribes that are missing. Now, obviously, if you go back to the 12 tribes, the original 12 tribes, there was Joseph. But Joseph,
It's a baker's dozen.
right. Well, Joseph was replaced by Ephraim and Manasseh, but then the Levites didn't get land, so they got taken out. But then now, when we get to Revelation, the Levites are put back in, and then Dan is taken out, and Joseph's put back in, and Ephraim is taken out. So if you remember that sometimes the northern kingdom is called Ephraim,
Right.
and that was a derogatory term because Ephraim was an idolatrous tribe, and Dan was too. So Dan was associated with Jeroboam building the 2 calves for the.
And when they get to the promised land, they reject the land that he wants to give them and they take different
Exactly.
lands.
That's the
Yeah.
other thing about Dan. And I think also another thing about Dan is, and I would have to look this
Has the
one
most
up.
normal name. Poor Dan.
I know. But you might know this, but I'm pretty sure that Jacob, when he was blessing all of his children, he said to Dan that he would be a brood of vipers.
Yeah.
And so that would be another reason now. When
I'm just imagining that, like, I bless you, you suck.
You brood of vipers. Oh, and then you.
Yeah.
especially with what a snake is related to, is like it was pretty intense what he was saying about him. But as we look at that in the terms of the 144,000 witnesses, that they are taken out because of their actions, because of their idolatry. And then to keep 12, because we need 12, then we put Joseph back in, we put the Levites back in. But
like I said, it's kind of funny at the very beginning of that. There's no tribe of Joseph. It's Ephraim and Manasseh. So I always say that it's a baker's dozen. There's always 13, 12 tribes.
Yep.
It's like, and then there's different places in the Bible where they will mix and match.
well, there's really 14 if you keep Joseph.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it is it's a little bit confusing.
So, in essence, do a quick study or a not so quick study on Dan and Ephraim, and that'll answer the question of why they were taken out.
But it kind of relates to what we were just saying about a lot of people that are apostates are still spiritual.
Yeah.
And basically that's who Dan and Ephraim were. They were still spiritual, but they just did not worship God in the way he said he wanted to be worshiped, which that was the whole northern kingdom, but they were worshiping other gods.
And many will come and say, Lord, Lord, didn't we
Exactly.
do miracles in your name? Didn't we prophesy? I didn't know you. So the other thing that you talked about, we didn't really have time to talk about. Let's talk about the Bema seat. So Bema seat's what, 2 Corinthians 5?
I have no idea. But yes, probably.
Second Thessalonians. No, second. Yeah, 2 Corinthians 5:10.
5:10-ish.
There's a lot of firsts and seconds in there to try to.
Yeah.
Yes, so 2 Corinthians 5:10.
Now, I preached a message about this, and I almost burned my eyebrows off. I don't know if you remember this a few years ago where I had the flash paper in the bowl. But tell me a little bit about you have a long answer and a short answer.
You should tell us, because you preached the sermon on it.
So my understanding, I'll tell you my understanding of the Bema seat, and then you can correct me. How about that?
Okay.
Or add on. My understanding of the Bema
I'll
seat.
correct you.
Yeah. In 2 Corinthians, it says we will all stand before the throne of Christ. which is different than the throne of
Exactly.
God and the great white throne of judgment, that we're going to sit before the throne of Christ, that when Christians, people who are Christ followers, it's already been decided that we're saved, we are going to go before the throne. And it says that basically the things that are in your life are either made of silver and gold and precious jewels, which means that they have eternal value, they're valuable, or they're made of chaff, straw, hay, whatever it is. And so there's going to be this moment where the refiner's fire, like that we talk about, that those things are burned away out of your life, and you're kind of left with what your life has been made of. So it's like if you come and you picture this big pile, and part of it's hay and part of it is jewels, and that it goes up in flames, and you are left for what actually had eternal significance, and that's kind of what you enter into the kingdom with.
And the difference between that and the great white throne judgment is all of those things, even though some of them are going to be burned up and some of them are going to be left from the fire, all of those things were good things. It's not our sin. That our sin, we're not being judged for our sin, we're being judged for our works.
Right.
Which is different from the great white throne judgment, where they are being judged
That's just yay or nay.
for their
So
either you know Christ or you don't.
right. So we've already the payment or the penalty has already been paid for the sin. It doesn't mean we're perfect. It just means, well, that's already taken care of. You don't have to redo that. It's okay. Now what's left? The goals, and now you get rewarded for those things. It doesn't.
Are you a fabulous golfer?
Yeah.
Great. You're not going to need that here.
Yeah. So So some people believe, that. Oh, does that mean that since it's already taken care of, I'm perfect? Everything I've done is perfect now. No, you've got issues, but it's already been covered. It's taken care of.
In my mind, golf things won't even be there.
Well,
They
actually
will, they
not a
will
big
not
golf.
be a part of the pile.
I told somebody the most sobering thing I think in my life was I used to, play a video game called World of Warcraft, and when you logged in, there was a counter that told you it was just the time that you were logged in, so not the time that you owned the game, and it was so your collective playtime. And so when I hit 1 year, I was like, I need to get a life. I was, and because that meant, and there are times that I was logged in that I was in the other room and not
Right.
playing, but it's just like, oh, there's a year of my life that I have spent on this game, and that took me like 3 years to amass. But it's just one of those things where I'm going, the hours that I had played had stacked up.
But still, 3 years, that's a third of each one of those years.
And so, I'm just sitting there going,
Wow.
man, I have been logged into this game, whether I'm playing it or not, for that amount of time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's crazy. And so I think about
That
that where
won't
I'm
be
like,
there either.
yeah, just up in flames. I'm like going, oh, that's wasted. You don't need that anymore. But if I had spent that time in Scripture, that's precious silver and
Right.
Right. So ultimately, that Bema seat, what Trudy said at the end about that, and it was powerful. I'm going to come back during our recap this week and mention it. What we do here in this life on earth matters. It's not like, oh, I've been forgiven, I'm just going to get to heaven. So no, what we do matters. So we have to give it everything we have. We have to live with passion. We have to be consistent. We have to be dedicated to the things of Christ because it matters.
absolutely.
And it's interesting, not that I talked to a ton of people after last Sunday, but I think every person that I spoke to mentioned that they were so thankful that I said that, because I guess we wonder, is it worth it? Is it worthwhile? Especially if we don't see the miraculous sign, if things don't change like we think they should, is it worth doing what God says to do? So that was encouraging, but also at the same time, this is something that we need to encourage each other in, that this might be hard, or it may look like it's not worth anything, but if you're being obedient to God, if you're doing what he told you to do today, if that's folding the laundry or whatever it is, that is going to be rewarded. You are going to get a reward for that if you're doing it in the name of Christ.
Well, I know that people have different views on rewards in heaven and things like that, but I was very touched by that as well when you said that. I was like, just the reward of having your Father look at you and say, I'm so proud of you. You did a good job. That to me, it's like, whether, like I know there's lots of views on rewards in heaven about positions or
Right.
jewels in your crown, but I'm going just that alone is going to feel so good that it's like, worth it.
We talk a lot about the ladies. I don't know why, but every group of people I think we've ever had as we've read through the Bible, they're like, well, if I'm just cleaning the toilets in heaven. I was like really? Is that our...
And when they're like, you have a big mansion, I'm like, that's a lot to clean.
Yeah. So, man, it's crazy that a 30-minute podcast went by so fast.
I know. It's supposed to be the 167, so it's technically supposed to be an hour, but I don't think we'll have any complaints. All right, I got one last question for you.
We got to go an hour.
Yeah.
What are some great resources for people if they're looking to know more about this?
The Bible is a great resource.
Jesus.
Yeah. It's always the right answer. The Bible and Jesus.
So if I'm looking in the Bible, I'm going to look in Daniel. I'm going to look in Thessalonians. I'm going to look in Revelation. But you should really have a good understanding of the whole thing.
Right. If you don't know Daniel, you will not understand Revelation. That's for sure.
I might throw Genesis in there too, like the first part of Genesis.
Yeah, and Ezekiel. That's hard. That's a hard book to understand too. So I think that's our next study. We're going to do Ezekiel, but I would say
so. Join Trudy's.
Right. Yeah. Join Trudy's
study.
Ezekiel study. Right Now Media is the study that we did with Stephen Armstrong. Stephen Armstrong actually died during COVID. So I think he died in 2020, 2021, but it's still recent. Like he had done this study right before he passed. So it is interesting, some of the things that he talked about. Now he would say something different, I'm sure, because technology has progressed.
Yeah.
Because he would be like one of those helicopter guys, I think, but I don't think he would say that now, but anyway.
Well, and so that if you want to check that out, Right Now Media is a subscription base. It's like Netflix for Bible studies.
Right.
If you go on our website, newlifegardener.com, under media, it'll say Right Now Media. You can set up an account, download it for free, watch it on your phone.
And you can actually order a workbook, which I think is not that expensive. The way that we did that study is during the week you would watch. We actually tried to do 2 a week. I think they're 45 minutes each session. So we would watch them and take notes, and then we would come together and watch them again and then discuss them. So it's not going to be this is a simple, I'm just going to, sit here and listen while I'm doing something else. Like you're going to have to study.
Yeah, and the study they did with Stephen Armstrong is 87 weeks.
Right.
The men, so in our men's group, we went through it a year ago.
About the same time we did,
and we did the 12-week study.
Because there's 2 studies on Right Now Media.
Yes, they're both on Right Now Media.
Yeah, so we did the condensed version of 12 weeks.
You can do it for 12 weeks or the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right,
And so,
for the rest of your life.
2 years.
Todd Hampson is, they're called the Nonprofit's Guide to, and then whatever, different things. ... Right. So he has one on Revelation and he has one on the end times. Those are way more, it's still a lot of information. So we just finished the one on Revelation, and it's a lot of information still. So that might be something to look into, but he's got the end times one would be if you wanted something a little more, a little generic, a little wider, not just about Revelation. But in all of those studies, you're going to learn about Ezekiel and Daniel, because you can't understand Revelation unless you do. So,
and then some podcasts. So Jimmy Evans, good end times podcasts.
You just have to be really careful with Christian end time podcasters because
they're doing it in real time.
Yeah.
And they are also, like, sometimes they're a little dramatic, and because that's their life.
Yeah. It's like, this is going to happen right now. It didn't happen.
Yeah, they're a little dramatic. But
there's another resource of someone who's also dead now, but I recommend, usually there's this guy, Chuck Missler.
Yeah, his is good too.
His is good. And like, again, Chuck Missler, I'm about 90% of where he's at, but he does a great job of that same thing of going, let me show you this. In like, his whole thing about Revelation is, this is a symbol. Let me show it to you in the Old Testament. This is what it meant then.
Right.
This is and just, he's basically teaching you Revelation by teaching you the Old Testament.
That's the only way. Yeah, I think that's the only way you're going to learn Revelation. I say another thing would be to just read Revelation,
It says you get a benefit and blessing.
you get a benefit, because that's exactly what I was going to say, because you're going to be blessed by it, even if you don't really get it.
I feel so blessed and confused.
I will say this, though. It was a joy because I asked the ladies, I said, so are you afraid of Revelation anymore? And they all said no. So that is, I don't think God wants us to look at the Bible and say, this is too hard, this is too scary, I can't get this. He wants us to study, to show ourselves approved, and we can do that.
And to live your life that when Jesus comes back, you go, yes, and not, oh no.
Yep. And encourage one another with these words.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging in there and being with us. Hey, thank you guys. I know that they're probably disappointed that this didn't go 2 hours, but we'll be back next week. We'll have one more week of the series. If you haven't checked it out yet, go onto our app, go to the website, look under our sermon series. That's going to be the end times. And I love that you guys are doing this. So thanks for doing it.
Yep, thank you.
All right. See you next week. If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardener.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.